question is that I call the Honourable Shane Jones.
Kia ora no tātou. Firstly, Sir, let me acknowledge the new Minister, Mr Brownlee. It is a complicated area, transport, but with the experience of his parliamentary years, the skill and the Job-like patience he's showing to his task in Christchurch, I'm sure with the minimum amount of effort, he will eclipse the deeds of Mr Joyce on this point. So we actually support this bill, Sir, but there are a number of points which unfortunately I will be unable to make, as I'm no longer likely to grace the committee David Bennett chairs. My services, Sir, have been called by Shane Ardern in the primary produce sector, etc., because, Sir, we need to get back to that sector and strip the red tape that this government has unwisely allowed to grow like some sort of noxious weed through that part of the economy, Sir, but that's for another matter. Yes, modernisation of the RUC system is important, but why it's important is because that's the basis of the revenue we actually rely upon for the ongoing upkeep and advancement of the infrastructure which we call our transport system. There are a couple of areas, Sir. Consultation, unwisely, by the government has been deprecated and diminished in status in this legislation. Now, really, all the largest or one of the most sophisticated transport operators in the country, what they actually wanted to toll, and I hope Mr Brownlee does have the opportunity to go and meet with the Chief Executive Officer of Toll, who I've found, Sir, to be a very non-partisan chap. He spreads the tickets for rugby around on a very fair and even basis. I'm not entirely sure, Sir, whether or not we're going to reach the threshold as to whether they have to be declared in this irksome process, which has become more and more petty, otherwise known as pecuniary interest. But that's another matter, Sir. That's another matter. So I would say that toll transport, and I think they're a proxy, Sir, for a host of other companies, they are bothered by the fact that, yes, subsidiary legislation will be used, i.e. regulatory making powers, but there's no duty on the Minister to go through essentially a justiciable process, Sir, of consultation with the affected parties prior to the promulgation of the regulations, and that's not unreasonable. So that was an area, Sir, that we pushed quite extensively in our, I wouldn't call them debates, Sir, just discussions and differences of opinion in the Select Committee, but by and large the Select Committee, when it dealt with this bill, because it's partly technical and partly political, we found a lot of common ground. We actually did find a lot of common ground, Sir. The thing to bear in mind is that there was no overwhelming evidence put before us that the current system was creaking to the point of collapse. There was a sense from the bureaucrats that there was a case for modernisation, and there was a case that as the technology improved and people could actually rely upon more efficient ways to ensure that they were being legal, that we shouldn't stand in the way of this process of actually modernising how we charge revenue, collect revenue from those, in particular the heavy haulage fleet, etc., within the country. Now, we need to be mindful, Sir, and we call upon the Minister, where it is evident that this policy, as it becomes law and that it moves through the process of subsidiary legislation, that where it is evident there either are egregious omissions or it's actually not working how the bureaucrats thought it might work, that there's a willingness and a level of courage on the part of the Minister to actually improve matters as it goes along, because far be it for me to want to spare the Minister the agony, but no one actually wants to see what Minister Annette King faced in 2008, as I recall, when she actually increased the costs of road user charges, and it led to something akin to a large truck strike in places like Whangarei, and other large urban areas were congested as people were that enraged about the way in which the costs were changed at that particular point in time. So let's be confident, Sir, as we move through the latter stages of this, that this bill does not represent inadvertently an additional impost on our transport fleet, because rest assured that will add an intolerable burden, Sir, on the tradable sector. It will increase the decrease the efficiency in terms of price and quality of service in respect of our exports, and it may also have the effect of chasing more Kiwis out of this industry as they think about going to Australia, where unfortunately they are able to earn better amounts of money, etc. And so there's an additional point. The smaller trucks, sir.
Is the member seeking another call?
Yes.
I call the Honourable Shane
So there's an
Jones.
additional area where we were criticised as a committee. People felt that the larger firms, with their vested interests and their ability to absorb cost through a larger, essentially an armada or a fleet of vehicles, would actually, sir, slowly but surely marginalise the smaller firms and put them out of business. That's actually not good. No firm actually wants to see a system, and no citizen should want to see a system, sir, where it becomes calcified, becomes inefficient, and the large players have the ability to game the market. So I think, sir, it's important that the smaller firms, after all, that's the genius of competition. The smaller firms, a wee bit more nimble, a little bit more flexible, hold the larger ones to account. So we need to bear in mind, sir, that during the process where we received lobbying, we received advocacy, we received submissions, there was a concern that the smaller, perhaps undercapitalised firms would not be able to make the process or the transition. And I don't think it's unreasonable, sir, that those of us who are parliamentarians on this committee or who will be coming onto this committee are mindful not only of the large, powerful vested interests, but also the smaller firms, and in particular the areas for example, where I hail from, sir, where there's forestry, there's aquaculture, and a host of pastoral industries. Not all the firms in those areas, sir, are large, nationally spread enterprises. So it's important that we have a view about the importance of competition, the importance of innovation, and ensure that as this modernisation system begins to bite, it doesn't have the perverse impact of actually reducing the ability of some firms to stay in business as a consequence of an ill-conceived and poorly executed new bout of red tape. Now, sir, far be it for me to apply red tape to Jerry Brownlee. In relation, sir, to what the man has already got to deal with in Christchurch, and I'm sure I speak for my colleagues on this side of the House, we actually I personally wish the man well in expediting the process to help our fellow citizens down that part of Aotearoa. But please, I make a plea, when we implement changes of this nature, let us ensure that we hold our bureaucrats to account, that as the process unfolds, where they find examples that the policy is developing and creating anomalies and poor results, that we've got the courage to change it and ensure that our transport fleet remains efficient and competitive, because that's going to have a significant impact on our ability to pay our way through expanding the tradable sector or growing our international revenue. Thank you, sir.
I call the Honourable Member Phil Twyford.
Thank you, Mr Chair.